Okay, guys, this message is for the man-child, for the elect. For those that know who you are, that know that the Lord is coming for a remnant, a very small remnant, this message is for you. I don't normally address in this way, in this manner, but this is what this message is for. Just those. Now, if you don't understand the things that we're talking about, don't worry about it. But for those that this makes sense to, here it goes. Revelation 14. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion. Remember the lamb. The lamb is the king. Stood on Mount Zion. And with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as it were a voice of many waters, as a voice of great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And you see our harp right here. And they sang, as it were, a new song before the throne and before the four beasts. Remember the four beasts? And the elders, and no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. Okay, I'm also going to show you Revelation 11. In Revelation 11, it was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, measure the temple, and the altar, and those that worship therein. Let's say that again. Is given a reed, measure the temple, okay, and the altar. So the place where the altar is the inner court, okay, the altar and those that worship therein. All right. Then later in Revelation 11, it also talks about this assembly. And the 24 elders which sat before God on their seats fell upon their faces, worshiping God, saying, We give you thanks, O Lord God Almighty, who was, who is to come, because you have taken to you your great power, and you have reigned. In verse 19, the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in the temple the ark of the covenant, and there were lightnings, voices, thunderings, and an earthquake, and great hail. Everything I'm reading to you is the same thing. Again, if we go to Revelation 12 and verse 10, and I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation, strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. As well, Revelation 8. We're going to get into, guys, the who, what, where, why, and when of everything that I'm reading to you. I'm just reading right now these verses, and we're going to connect it all together. And it was opened, the seventh seal, and there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them was given 7 trumpets. In verse 5, And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire from off the altar, and cast it to the earth. And there were voices, thunderings, and lightnings, and a great earthquake. Okay. Now, the way all this comes together is by 2 Chronicles chapter 5. In 2 Chronicles chapter 5, it gives us this assembly. Then Solomon assembled all the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes, the chief of the fathers of the children of Israel, unto Jerusalem, to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. So here we have the elders, the heads of the tribes, the chief of the fathers of the children of Israel, to bring up the ark. The ark of the covenant is always associated with the 12 tribes. Okay? So when you see the Ark of the Covenant in the temple in Revelation 11, when you see the Ark of the Covenant in 2 Chronicles chapter 5, it's about the king. It's the king's throne. And the Ark of the Covenant was taken from them at the Babylonian captivity and never returned. Okay? But it's seen in heaven. Alright? And these people will see it because they are in the inner court. Therefore, all the men of Israel assemble themselves unto the king in the feast, which is the 7th month. So guys, the things I'm describing to you has already happened. At the time of this recording, it's the 9th month and 2nd day. Okay? So this happened. These people were assembled before the throne. If you're part of these people, then you may or may not be aware of this, but it happened. It happened in the 7th month, the feast of the 7th month. Okay, and these elders, they brought up the ark. Okay, let's see. Now let's go to verse 7. And the priest brought the ark of the covenant of the Lord into his place to the oracle of the house, which is the most holy place, under the wings of the cherubim. Now the wings of the cherubim there, guys, deals with those 4 living creatures. Those 4 living creatures are assembled around the throne. There's always a pattern of 4. The Ark of the Covenant only has 2 cherubim. Okay, so by itself, it's only 2. But when it comes into the temple here, there's 2 other cherubim, higher cherubim, and I'll show you this to scale so that you can see it. All right? So here we have the pattern of 4. What this is representing in verse 7 is the 4 living creatures. Now you have them coming into formation. All right? And verse 10, and there was nothing in the ark of the covenant save the 2 tables which Moses had put in Horeb. When it came to pass, when the priests were come out of the holy place, for all the priests that were present were sanctified and did not then wait by course. Also the Levites, which were the singers, and those of Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun, and their sons and their brethren, arrayed in white linen. Okay, all these people are arrayed in white linen, having cymbals and psalteries and harps. You see our harp. Stood at the east end of the altar. Now remember, we measured the inner court, the altar, and those that worship therein. Okay? Here it tells us about them, the east end of the altar. And with them 120 priests. Let me say that again. With them 120 priests. These are the 120. Sounding with trumpets. Okay? All of this, if you don't know, I'll put links in the description field for this. Those that this message isn't for you, you can learn about these things. We have a message on the 120, but these are the 120 priests, the 120 sounding with trumpets. And when it came to pass that as the trumpeters and singers were as one to make one sound, to be heard in praising and thanking the Lord. A couple things here. First, in Hebrew, trumpeters here deals with this word that is not common, but in 1 Chronicles 15, verse 24, it talks about these trumpeters. They are porters, and there are 7. So this word trumpeters is associated with porters, and we see them as angelic porters in the book of Revelation when they blow 7 trumpets. Okay? So that's the significance of the word trumpet. Singers were to make one sound. Now this is also similar to Pentecost when the 120 were gathered in the upper room so as to make one sound. And they were heard praising and thanking the Lord. Remember, we saw the 24 elders praising and thanking the Lord, who was, who is to come, the Almighty. For he has taken his great power and he has reigned. This is all about the King. And when they lift up their voice with the trumpeters and cymbals and instruments of music and praising the Lord, saying, for he is good and his mercy endures forever. Then the house was filled with smoke in the house of the Lord, and so that the priest could not stand to minister by reason of the cloud. Remember, the 24 elders they bowed on their faces before the throne. Okay? This is all the same thing, guys. For the glory of the Lord filled the house. So here we have who? We have the 120. When you measure the inner court with the rod, there's also the outside diameter of the 144 cubit inner court is 1,200 feet. So that's the 1,200. You also have the 144,000 mentioned, that assembly in Revelation 14. It also happens in the 7th month, okay, before the Feast of the King. Now, I'm showing you all this, those that have ears to hear, because this is the message. What happened is, there was obviously great interest at the time of the woman clothed with the sun sign in September, but then this happened, okay? So, these are the words what the Lord spoke. I'm in Deuteronomy 5, of your assembly on the mount, in the midst of the fire, of the cloud, in the thick darkness, in the great voice. And he added no more, and he wrote with them the 2 tables of stone. Again, we have the 2 tables of stone, and delivered them unto me. And it came to pass, when you heard the voice out of the midst of the darkness, for the mountain did burn with fire. Remember, we heard the great voice before the throne, the voice of many waters, all right? That you came near to me, even the heads of your tribes, okay, and your elders. The same thing. These people, this is also an assembly, and there's a message here. Behold, the Lord our God has showed us his glory, his greatness. We have heard his voice out of the midst of the fire. We have seen this day that God does speak with men, and he lives. Now, therefore, why should we die? For this great fire will consume us. If we will hear the voice of God, of the Lord our God, any more, then we shall die. So what's happening is the congregation is saying, we've seen God's voice, but we don't want to draw close to God. All right? And so they're telling the elders, you go. And the Lord heard the voice of your words when you spake unto me. And the Lord said unto me, I have heard the voice of the words of this people which have spoken. They have well said, and all they have spoken. Oh, that there were such a heart in them, that they would fear me, that they would keep my commandments always, that it might be well with them and with their children forever. Go and say to them, go you to your tents. But as for you, as for who? As for the heads of the tribes, the elders. But as for you, stand here by me. The Lord is asking you, stand by me. Okay? Let everyone else be scattered. Let them all go back to their tents and do their own thing. But in this time, the Lord is saying, stand by me, and I will speak to you all my commandments. So that is the message to the 120. That is the message to the 1,200. That is the message to the 144,000. Stand by him. Okay? And keep his commandments. The other people, they thought there was going to be a rapture. It didn't happen. Okay? That doesn't mean the people weren't assembled in heaven. You can be in more than one place in one time. So your spirit, if you were part of the elect, a man-child, your spirit was in heaven in the 7th month. Okay? At the time of the feast. All right? It already happened. We're showing you this in 2 Chronicles 5. It shows it all perfectly. The Ark of the Covenant was open, and various proceedings before the throne took place. So be encouraged. The Lord is saying, stand by him. Let the others go into their tents. But as we say, he's coming soon. Okay? So thanks for watching. Actually, let me just show you, before we wrap it up, let me just show you this here. I don't know if the light, you can see this, but if you see this pattern, this is the Ark of the Covenant here, and these are the 2 cherubim. So these, let's see, maybe I can bring the camera a little closer here, guys. I want to kind of show you this. I think it's important. There you go. Okay, so you hear there's 2 cherubim here. There's small ones on the ark, and then there's large ones that in their wings touch the temple. This is the pattern that was completed in the ark. Okay, so guys, thanks for watching. And again, stand with the Lord. Okay? Amen.